The Galaxy Council trembles as humans cut off all negotiations. Part 1. The Breaking Point. The conference hall stretched endlessly before Commander Sarah Chen, its walls made of translucent crystal that reflected the light of 100 distant stars. She had been standing at the negotiation table for 6 hours straight, her feet aching, her patience worn thin as old cloth. Around her sat representatives from 43 alien species, each one looking down at her from elevated platforms designed to make humans feel small. Sarah was tired of feeling small. 5 years had passed since Earth made first contact with the Galactic Council. 5 long years of negotiations that went nowhere. 5 years of watching her people be treated like children begging for scraps. She had come to this place with hope once, believing that humanity would find friends among the stars. Instead, they had found bureaucrats and bullies. The current speaker was Ambassador Crix, a reptilian creature whose scales shimmered green under the station lights. His voice hissed through the translation system as he presented yet another list of demands. Humanity would reduce their colonial expansion by 70%. Humanity would pay increased tariffs on all exported goods. Humanity would submit their military fleet for inspection and possible disarmament. Sarah listened with her hands folded on the table, her face calm despite the anger burning in her chest. Beside her stood Captain Marcus Rivera, the military officer assigned to protect Earth's diplomatic mission. She could feel his tension even without looking at him. Marcus was a patient man, but even his patience had limits. When Crix finally finished speaking, Sarah rose slowly to her feet. The chamber fell silent. 43 species turned their attention to the human commander. "We reject these terms," Sarah said simply. The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Sarah remained standing, her expression unchanged. Chancellor Theron, the crystalline being who led the council, struck his staff against the floor. The sound rang out like a bell, demanding silence. His body caught the starlight and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the walls. "Commander Chen," Theron said, his voice cold and sharp, "you do not have the authority to reject council decisions. These are not requests. They are requirements for your continued membership in the galactic community. Then perhaps humanity no longer wishes to be part of your community," Sarah replied. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support seemed to fade away. Marcus shifted his weight beside her, ready for whatever came next. Theron leaned forward on his high seat. "You cannot be serious. Earth needs the Council. You need our trade routes, our technology, our protection. Without us, humanity will wither and die in isolation." Sarah reached for her data tablet and activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the negotiation table. Burning ships, destroyed cargo vessels, human colonies under attack, bodies floating in the void of space. "For the past 18 months, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, human vessels have been attacked throughout Council space. 47 ships destroyed, over 3,000 people killed. Our investigation has traced these attacks back to 4 Council member species." She pointed to specific species in the chamber. "The Crix Dominion, the Vorath Empire, the Zelthan Collective, the Haxian Union. All of you carried out coordinated strikes against civilian human targets." Crix rose from his seat, his scales bristling. "This is an outrageous accusation. Where is your proof?" Sarah expanded the display. Ship registries appeared, weapon signatures, flight path data, communication intercepts. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "We brought this information to the Council 3 months ago," Sarah continued. "We asked for justice. We asked for protection. Instead, we were told these were unfortunate accidents. We were told to accept compensation and move forward. Now you demand we disarm ourselves while you continue to attack us in secret." Chancellor Theron's crystalline face showed no emotion, but Sarah could see the slight dimming of his inner light. He knew, they all knew, the attacks had been sanctioned, perhaps even ordered, by the Council itself. "The evidence you present is circumstantial," Theron said carefully. "It proves nothing definitive. However, the Council is willing to investigate these incidents further, while you comply with our current requirements." Sarah looked at Marcus. The captain gave her a slight nod. They had discussed this moment many times. They had prepared for it. Now it was time to act. "No," Sarah said, turning back to face the Council. Humanity withdraws from all agreements with the Galactic Council effective immediately. We terminate all trade relationships. We recall all diplomatic personnel. We reject your authority over Earth and her colonies. Negotiations are over. The chamber exploded into chaos once more. Some species cheered. Others shouted threats. Chancellor Theron struck his staff repeatedly, trying to restore order, but the damage was done. Sarah gathered her belongings and walked toward the exit. Marcus fell into step beside her, along with the other 12 members of the human delegation. Behind them, the council continued to argue and threaten, but Sarah did not look back. As they walked through the corridors of Station Kepler 7, Marcus activated his communication device. This is Captain Rivera to all human personnel on station. Execute a protocol exodus. Repeat, execute protocol exodus. We are leaving. Throughout the massive space station, humans stopped what they were doing. Scientists abandoned their research. Traders closed their shops. Engineers powered down their equipment. Within minutes, every human on the station was moving toward the docking bays where their ships waited. The Council had not expected this. They had believed humanity would eventually bend to their demands like every other young species before them. They had miscalculated badly. Sarah reached the docking bay where the diplomatic vessel Horizon waited with engines already warming. The ship's captain, Elizabeth Park, met them at the airlock with a grim smile. "About time we left this place," Elizabeth said. "I have been waiting 5 years to fly us home with our dignity intact." "How many personnel do we have to evacuate?" Sarah asked. 3,417 humans across the entire station, Elizabeth replied. "All of them have been notified. The last transport will depart in 40 minutes. Sarah nodded and boarded the ship. From the bridge, she watched as other human vessels began undocking from the station. Cargo ships, research vessels, private transports, all of them leaving simultaneously. It was a sight she had dreamed about for years. Marcus joined her on the bridge. "We are receiving angry transmissions from the Council. They are ordering us to return immediately. Some species are threatening to seize our ships if we try to leave." "Let them try," Sarah said quietly. "They will find we are not as helpless as they believe." The truth was that humanity had not spent 5 years simply accepting Council abuse. They had been preparing. Admiral James Okafor, back on Earth, had insisted on building defenses in secret. He had argued that hope was not a strategy, and that Earth needed to be ready for the worst. The worst had arrived. As the Horizon pulled away from Station Kepler 7, Sarah activated a secure channel to Earth. Admiral Okafor's dark face appeared on the screen, his expression serious but satisfied. "Commander Chen," Okafor said, "I have been watching the Council feed." That was quite a speech. "We are coming home, Admiral," Sarah replied. "All of us. Every human in Council space is evacuating right now." "Good," Okafor said, "because 3 hours ago a Council fleet entered human territory without permission. They claimed it was a routine patrol, but we both know what it really means. They are testing our resolve." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "What did you do?" "I sent them a message," Okafor replied with a slight smile. "I told them to leave immediately or face consequences. They ignored the warning, so I showed them what consequences mean." On the screen, Admiral Okafor transmitted footage of the encounter. A Council patrol of 15 ships had approached the outer human colony of New Destiny. They had been met by what appeared to be a small defense force of 5 human vessels. The Council ships had opened their weapons ports, preparing to intimidate the defenders. Then the trap had sprung. Hidden weapons platforms on the nearby moon had activated. 3 more human warships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly behind the Council formation. The human forces had not fired to destroy, but they had disabled every single Council ship within 8 minutes. "We left them drifting, but alive," Okafor explained. "Their life support is intact. Rescue vessels can reach them within hours. But we made it very clear that any hostile action in human space will be met with overwhelming force." Sarah watched the footage with mixed emotions. Part of her was horrified by the violence. Another part was grimly satisfied that humanity had finally shown its teeth. "The Council will retaliate," she said. "Let them try," Okafor replied, echoing her earlier words. "We have been building defenses for 5 years while they thought we were weak. We have weapons they have never seen. We have tactics they cannot predict. And most importantly, we have the will to defend ourselves. They took that for weakness. They were wrong." The Horizon jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving council space behind. Around them, hundreds of other human ships were doing the same, all heading toward Earth and her colonies. It was the largest evacuation in human history, and it was happening without a single casualty. On Station Kepler 7, Chancellor Theron watched the human ships disappear from his sensors. He felt something he had not experienced in his long life: genuine fear. The humans had not begged. They had not negotiated. They had simply walked away, and something in their eyes had suggested they were ready for whatever came next. Ambassador Crix approached the Chancellor, his scales dark with agitation. "We should send the fleet immediately. Teach them they cannot simply leave our authority." Theron looked at the reptilian ambassador with barely concealed contempt. "You and your allies attacked their civilians. You created this situation, and now you want to make it worse?" "They are weak," Crix insisted. "One young species against the entire council? They will beg to return within months." But Theron was not so certain. He had seen something in Commander Chen's eyes during her final speech. Not fear, not anger. Something far more dangerous. Absolute conviction. The humans believed they could survive without the council. More than that, they believed they would thrive. For the first time in 300 years, the Galactic Council faced a species that refused to be controlled. And Theron suspected that everything was about to change. Sarah stood on the bridge of the horizon and watched the stars streak past as they traveled home. Beside her, Marcus was coordinating with other ships in the evacuation fleet. Behind her, the diplomatic staff worked to secure all sensitive information and ensure nothing valuable fell into council hands. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked quietly during a brief moment of calm. Sarah considered the question carefully. "I think we did the only thing we could do with our dignity intact. The council had us trapped in a system designed to keep us weak. They would have bled us dry slowly, taking everything until we had nothing left. At least now we have a chance to build something better. Even if it means war?" "Even if it means war," Sarah confirmed. "But I do not think it will come to that. The council is not as unified as they pretend. We have already seen cracks in their authority. Some species have been quietly supporting us, sending secret messages of solidarity. When we show we can survive without them, others will follow our example." Marcus smiled slightly. "So we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species the council has oppressed. We are fighting for the principle that no one should have to bow to tyrants," Sarah corrected. "What others do with that example is their choice." The Horizon continued its journey home, one ship among hundreds carrying humanity away from the Galactic Council forever. Behind them, they left a galaxy on the edge of transformation. Ahead of them waited challenges that would test every ounce of their courage and determination. But they were going home. And they were going home free. The silent war 3 weeks had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and the silence from Earth was driving the Council mad. Chancellor Theron stood in his private chamber, reviewing reports that made less sense with each passing hour. Every human in Council space had vanished completely. Not just the diplomats and traders, but the scientists, the students, the tourists, even the criminals hiding in alien ports, all gone. More disturbing was what they had left behind, or rather what they had not left behind. "Everything is destroyed," reported Chief Investigator Merlix, a 6-legged creature with compound eyes that saw in spectrums beyond human vision. "Every human facility we have examined shows the same pattern. The buildings are intact, but every computer core is wiped clean. Every piece of advanced technology has been removed or rendered useless. They even took the furniture." Theron felt his crystalline structure dim with frustration. "What about their research data? Surely they could not erase everything." "They could and did," Merlix replied. "Worse, they left behind corruption viruses in the systems. Any attempt to recover data results in cascading failures. We have lost 3 major data centers simply trying to access abandoned human files. It is as if they planned this evacuation years in advance. Because they had." Theron was beginning to understand that humanity had never trusted the Council. While appearing to negotiate in good faith, they had been preparing to leave. Every concession they had accepted, every insult they had endured had been buying time to build an escape route. The economic impact was already severe. Human traders had carried goods throughout Council space, connecting markets that the official trade routes overlooked. Human engineers had maintained systems that other species found tedious. Human researchers had shared discoveries freely, expecting the same in return but never receiving it. Now all of that was gone, and the gaps were showing. Ambassador Crix entered the chamber without waiting for permission, his scales bright with agitation. The Vorath have declared they are reconsidering their council membership. The Talveen are making similar noises. If we do not act decisively, the entire council structure will collapse. Perhaps it should, Theron said quietly. Crix hissed in shock. You cannot mean that. The council has maintained galactic peace for 6 centuries. Has it? Theron challenged. Or has it simply maintained our control over younger species? Be honest, Crix. When was the last time the council acted justly toward a member species with less military power than ourselves? The reptilian ambassador had no answer. Theron had been asking himself the same question repeatedly since watching Commander Chen walk out of the council chamber. The uncomfortable truth was that the council had become exactly what it claimed to prevent: a dominating empire that used laws and regulations instead of military force. But some council members preferred the old ways. Within hours of Theron's admission, 12 species voted to send a military fleet to human space. They called it a peacekeeping operation. Everyone knew it was an invasion. War Marshal Zethrak commanded the armada from his flagship Dominion. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns, a master strategist who had never lost a battle. His fleet consisted of 300 warships from 20 different species, the largest force the Council had assembled in a century. We will approach Earth's outer colonies first, Zethrak explained to his command staff as they reviewed the battle plan. Humanity has 6 major settlements beyond their home system. We will blockade them, cut off their supply lines, and force Earth to negotiate. A simple, clean operation that demonstrates council power without excessive bloodshed. His intelligence officer, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Quill, pulsed with uncertainty. Marshal, our information about human military capabilities is limited. They have been very secretive about their defense forces. Because they have nothing to hide, Zethrak replied dismissively. Humans are a young species. Their technology is adequate but unremarkable. Their tactics are straightforward. We have studied every human military exercise conducted in Council space over the past 5 years. They pose no significant threat to a force of this size. What Zethrak did not know was that every military exercise he had studied was carefully staged theater. Humanity had shown the Council exactly what they wanted the Council to see. Competent but unexceptional, forces using conventional weapons and predictable strategies. The reality was very different. Admiral James Okafor watched the approaching Council fleet from his command center on Earth. Beside him stood Dr. Elena Volkov, the physicist whose breakthrough discoveries had revolutionized human weapons technology. Her gray hair was tied back and her eyes showed the exhaustion of too many sleepless nights. But her mind remained sharp. They are coming in standard battle formation, Elena observed, studying the tactical display. 4 wings of 75 ships each with the command vessels protected in the center. Very traditional, very predictable, Okafor agreed. They think this will be easy. Let us teach them otherwise. Activate Fortress Delta. In the asteroid field surrounding the colony world of New Destiny, something massive came to life. What the Council had mapped as a large metallic asteroid was actually a military installation that had been under construction for 4 years. Fortress Delta was humanity's secret weapon, a station equipped with experimental technology that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Captain Marcus Rivera commanded the station from its central control room. Around him, 300 personnel worked at their stations, ready to spring humanity's trap. Marcus had been chosen for this assignment specifically because of his experience at the Council negotiations. He understood how these aliens thought. Council fleet entering weapons range in 15 minutes, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the tactical station. They are hailing us, demanding our surrender. Ignore them, Marcus ordered. Power up the dimensional shields. Bring all weapons to standby. Deploy the drone swarms. Throughout the asteroid field, thousands of small automated drones activated. They had been placed over months hidden among the rocks, waiting for exactly this moment. Each drone carried enough firepower to cripple a capital ship, and they were controlled by an artificial intelligence that could coordinate attacks across the entire battlefield simultaneously. Marshal Zethrak watched as his fleet approached the human colony. Sensors showed minimal defenses, a few orbital platforms, maybe 20 human warships, nothing that could stop 300 Council vessels. Prepare to broadcast surrender terms, Zethrak ordered. Once they see our numbers, they will... Alarms shrieked across the bridge. His tactical display exploded with red markers as thousands of contacts appeared throughout the asteroid field. Before he could process what was happening, the drones struck. The first wave targeted the Council ship's communication arrays. Precisely coordinated strikes knocked out the fleet's ability to coordinate. The second wave hit the weapons ports, disabling offensive capabilities before they could be used. The third wave simply caused chaos, exploding near but not on vessels, creating debris fields that scattered the formation. Return fire, Zethrak roared, but his ships were already in disarray. Without communications, each vessel fought independently. Without coordination, their numerical advantage meant nothing. Then Fortress Delta opened fire. The dimensional shields that Dr. Volkov had developed did not stop weapons fire. Instead, they redirected it through folded space, making the station impossible to target accurately. Weapons that should have hit the fortress appeared kilometers away, striking nothing but empty void. The station's own weapons were equally revolutionary. Particle beams that ignored conventional shields, missiles that could change direction mid-flight, railguns that fired projectiles at near light speed. The Council fleet had never seen anything like it. Within 20 minutes, 75 Council ships were disabled or destroyed. The rest were retreating in complete disorder, their beautiful formation shattered into scattered groups of vessels fleeing for their lives. Marcus watched them go with grim satisfaction. Cease fire. Let them run. Deploy recovery teams to rescue survivors from disabled vessels. Lieutenant Kim looked up from her station. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Okafor. He says to broadcast this message on all frequencies. Marcus nodded. Put it through. Admiral Okafor's face appeared on screens throughout the battle zone, visible to every Council ship and every listening post in 20 systems. This is Admiral James Okafor of the Earth Defense Force, to the Galactic Council and all who serve it. Hear this message clearly. Humanity did not want war. We wanted peace, partnership, and mutual respect. You refused to give us these things. You attacked our civilians. You restricted our growth. You treated us as subjects rather than equals, so we left. And you followed us here to force us back into submission. This was your choice, not ours. Okafor paused, letting his words sink in. You came with 300 ships. You came with threats. You came believing we were weak and would submit to your authority. You were wrong. We defended ourselves. We disabled your fleet. We could have destroyed every vessel, but we chose mercy. We chose to prove a point rather than take lives unnecessarily. The Admiral's expression hardened. But understand this, if you attack human territory again, there will be no mercy. If you threaten our colonies, we will respond with total war. If you harm our people, we will make you regret it for generations. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Force our hand, and you will discover what humanity is truly capable of when fighting for survival. The message ended. Throughout Council space, the recording spread across every network and news service. Within hours, the entire galaxy knew that humanity had defeated the largest Council military operation in a century. The reactions were immediate and explosive. On the world of Talveen Prime, crowds gathered in the streets celebrating. The Talveen had suffered under Council economic restrictions for decades. Seeing the mighty Council humbled gave them hope for change. On Vorath 7, the Planetary Assembly held an emergency vote. By sunset, they formally withdrew from the Council and requested direct trade negotiations with Earth. On a dozen other worlds, similar movements began. Species that had quietly resented Council dominance suddenly found their voices. If humanity could stand against the Council and win, perhaps they could too. In the Council chamber, Chancellor Theron watched his authority crumble in real time. Ambassadors were shouting at each other. Some were already packing to leave. Others were demanding immediate retaliation despite the obvious futility. Ambassador Crick slammed his clawed hand against his console. This is unacceptable. We must assemble a larger fleet. We must crush the humans before others follow their example. With what ships? Theron asked tiredly. Half our fleet is disabled. The other half is demoralized. And you saw what those humans can do. They have weapons we did not know existed. Technology we cannot counter. And worst of all, they have something we lost long ago. The absolute conviction that they are fighting for something worth dying for. Then we negotiate, suggested a delegate from a smaller species. We admit the humans were treated unfairly. We offer better terms. From a position of weakness? Crick snarled. That would destroy what little authority we have left. Theron dimmed his inner light completely, a sign of deep distress among his species. I fear that authority is already destroyed. We tried to control a species that refused to be controlled. We pushed them until they pushed back. And now the galaxy is watching to see what happens next. In the asteroid field around New Destiny, Captain Marcus Rivera supervised the rescue operations. Human medical teams were pulling survivors from disabled council ships, treating their wounds, and preparing them for return to their homeworlds. Dr. Elena Volkov joined him in the observation deck, watching the rescue vessels move among the wreckage. We won, she said quietly. But it doesn't feel like victory. Because it isn't, Marcus replied. This was just defending ourselves. Real victory would be building something better than what we left behind. Do you think we can? Marcus thought about Commander Sarah Chen's final words to the Council, about Admiral Okafor's message broadcast across the galaxy, about the hundreds of species watching to see if humanity would become like the Council, or choose a different path. I think we have to try, he said finally. Otherwise we just replaced one empire with another, and that would make all of this meaningless. Throughout human space, defense forces remained on high alert, but they also prepared for something else. The possibility that other species might approach them not as enemies, but as allies seeking the same freedom humanity had claimed. The silent war had been won. Now the real challenge began, building a galaxy where no one had to fight for basic dignity and respect. A new galaxy 2 months after the Battle of New Destiny, the galaxy looked very different. 17 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council. 8 more were in heated internal debates about their membership. The council that had dominated galactic politics for 6 centuries was disintegrating, and no one knew what would replace it. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation lounge of the diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching the traffic around the neutral station crossroads. Ships from dozens of species came and went, many of them heading to the new human embassy that had opened just last week. It was strange seeing so many aliens actively seeking humanity's company after years of being treated like unwanted guests in council space. We have 47 meeting requests today, Ambassador Priya Singh reported, entering the lounge with her ever-present data tablet. Priya had been Sarah's assistant during the council years, and now she managed diplomatic relations with the flood of species interested in working with Earth. 23 are from governments wanting to establish formal relations. 12 are trade delegations. 8 are species asking for help defending against council loyalists. And 4 are researchers wanting to share scientific discoveries. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the numbers. We cannot possibly meet with everyone. We have to try, Priya replied gently. These species are reaching out to us because they see humanity as different from the council. If we turn them away, we become exactly what we fought against. She was right, of course. Sarah had been thinking about this problem for weeks. Humanity had rejected the Council's domination, but now they were being offered a different kind of power, the power that comes from being the only real alternative to an oppressive system. Admiral James Okafor joined them via video link from Earth. His face showed the exhaustion of managing both a military on constant alert and an unprecedented diplomatic expansion. President, Amadi wants to know your recommendation, Okafor said without preamble. Earth is receiving requests to join something these species are calling the Free Trade Coalition. They are looking to us for leadership. The president wants to know if we should accept that role. Sarah had been dreading this conversation. If we accept, we risk becoming another council. If we refuse, we leave these species vulnerable to council retaliation. There is no good answer. Then we make a new answer, said a voice from the doorway. Captain Marcus Rivera entered the observation lounge, still wearing his uniform from Fortress Delta. He had been called to join the diplomatic mission specifically for this discussion. What if we create something different from what has existed before? Not a hierarchy with humanity at the top, but a genuine partnership of equals? The Council claimed to be a partnership of equals, Priya pointed out. It did not work. Because it was built wrong from the start, Marcus argued. He activated a holographic display showing his proposed structure. The Council gave all power to the founding species and made newer members subordinate. What if we built something where every species has equal voice regardless of age or military strength? where decisions require consensus, not majority rule, where membership is completely voluntary, and any species can leave at any time without penalty. Sarah studied the proposal with growing interest. You are describing a confederation, not an empire. But can such a system defend itself? The Council loyalists will not simply leave these breakaway species alone. We defend collectively, Marcus explained. Any attack on one member is treated as an attack on all, but we only act in defense, never aggression. We protect but do not control. Admiral Okafor leaned forward on his screen. That is a radical idea, Captain. It might actually work, but it requires trust between species that have been competing against each other for centuries. How do we build that trust? We start by being trustworthy ourselves, Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. We keep our promises. We share technology freely instead of hoarding it. We defend others without demanding tribute. We become what we wish the Council had been. The conversation continued for hours as they refined the proposal. By the end, they had a framework for something unprecedented, a voluntary alliance based on mutual benefit rather than domination, where small species had the same voice as large ones and where the goal was cooperation rather than control. President Victoria Amati reviewed their proposal from her office on Earth. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that had seen humanity through some of its darkest days. The responsibility of leading Earth at this crucial moment weighed heavily on her shoulders. This could change everything, she said finally. Not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy, if it works. And if it fails? Asked her chief advisor. Then at least we tried to build something better, Victoria replied. She approved the proposal and authorized Sarah to present it at a gathering of interested species. 3 weeks later, representatives from 53 different species gathered at Crossroads Station. The meeting room was enormous, designed to accommodate wildly different body types and environmental needs. Water-breathing species occupied sealed tanks. Methane breathers wore environmental suits. Silicon-based life forms stood next to carbon-based ones. It was the most diverse gathering anyone had ever seen outside council chambers. Sarah stood at the central platform, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. Some of these species had been enemies of each other for generations. Some had been council members until recently. All of them were here because they wanted something different from what the galaxy had offered them before. Thank you for coming, Sarah began, her voice translated into 53 different languages simultaneously. I know many of you are uncertain about why you are here. Some of you probably expect humanity to make demands or establish ourselves as the new dominant power. I understand that fear. It is what the galaxy has taught you to expect. She paused, letting her words settle. But humanity does not want to rule you. We do not want tribute or subordination. We want what we have always wanted, to be left alone to build our own future. However, we understand that many of you want the same thing. You want freedom to make your own choices without a council telling you what you can trade, where you can expand, how you must live. Sarah activated a holographic display showing the proposed charter. So we offer this, a voluntary confederation of independent species. No hierarchy, no dominant powers. Every member has equal voice in decisions that affect the group. Membership is completely voluntary and can be ended at any time. We share technology, resources, and knowledge freely. We defend each other against aggression, but never force anyone to participate in conflicts that do not threaten them directly. The reaction was immediate. Some species cheered, others looked skeptical. A few appeared confused as if they could not understand why anyone would offer such terms. Ambassador Lissa of the Talveen, a bird-like species with iridescent feathers, spoke first. This sounds ideal in theory, Commander Chen, but what prevents larger species from dominating smaller ones despite these rules? What prevents humanity specifically from using your military advantage to control the rest of us? It was a fair question. Sarah had expected it. Accountability, she replied. Every decision requires consensus among member species. No single species can act alone in the name of the Confederation. Additionally, we propose a rotating leadership structure where different species take turns managing administrative functions, and most importantly, complete transparency in all operations. No secret councils, no hidden agendas, no classified information that might be used to manipulate others. And if the old council attacks us? Asked a delegate from a species Sarah did not recognize. Will humanity truly defend us as equals? Admiral Okafor stood to answer that question. We will. Not because you serve us, but because an attack on one free species threatens all free species. We learned that lesson during our own history. We will not forget it. Chancellor Theron had somehow secured an invitation to observe the gathering. He stood at the back of the chamber, his crystalline body dim with shame. Sarah had allowed him to attend because she believed in the principle of transparency. If they were building something new, it should be done in full view of everyone, including former enemies. When the question period ended, Sarah made her final statement. We are not asking you to join us today. We are asking you to consider whether this kind of cooperation serves your people's interests. Take this proposal home. Discuss it with your governments and citizens. If you decide to join, we will welcome you as equals. If you decide not to join, we will still offer fair trade and diplomatic relations. The choice is yours. It will always be yours. Over the next month, species began making their decisions. The Talveen joined first, followed quickly by the Vorath and 16 other species that had already left the council. Then came surprises. Species that were still technically council members, but had lost faith in the organization's future. Even some former council loyalists approached quietly, asking if they could participate without officially leaving their old alliance. The Free Trade Coalition was born not with conquest or threats, but with simple offers of genuine partnership. Within 3 months, 47 species had joined. Trade routes opened that ignored the old council restrictions. Technology flowed freely between members. Scientific discoveries were shared openly. Defense agreements were signed based on mutual protection rather than domination. The old Galactic Council watched in growing despair as their authority evaporated. Some council species tried to maintain their power through economic pressure or military threats, but they found themselves increasingly isolated. Why would anyone trade with the council when the coalition offered better terms? Why would anyone accept council protection when coalition defense was more effective and came without the burden of subordination? Ambassador Crix, who had been among the most aggressive advocates for controlling humanity, found himself called before what remained of the council leadership. His scaled face showed confusion and anger as he tried to explain what had happened. We underestimated them, Crix admitted, the words clearly painful. We thought humans were like every other young species, eager to please, desperate for approval, willing to accept any terms to be included. We did not realize they would simply walk away, and we certainly did not expect them to build an alternative that works better than our system. Chancellor Theron had been in deep meditation for weeks, trying to understand where the council had gone wrong. Now, standing before the nearly empty council chamber, he finally spoke his truth. The mistake was ours from the beginning, Theron said, his crystalline voice carrying across the hall. We built a system designed to benefit the powerful at the expense of the weak. We convinced ourselves this was necessary for galactic stability, but really it was just convenient for us. We could have been what the humans are building. We chose not to be, and now we face the consequences. Some council members refused to accept this reality. They called for military action against the coalition. They demanded economic sanctions. They tried everything they could to reassert their dominance. But the galaxy had changed, and no amount of force could change it back. 6 months after the new Battle of New Destiny, President Victoria Amati stood before the Coalition Assembly, a gathering of all member species meeting to formalize their charter. The document they approved was simple but revolutionary. Every species had the right to self-determination. No species could claim authority over another. Cooperation was always voluntary, and disagreements would be resolved through dialogue rather than force. This is not the end of our challenges, Victoria told the assembled delegates. There will be disputes between members. There will be external threats. There will be moments when our principles are tested. But I believe that what we are building here is worth defending. Not because humanity leads it, but because every species here has chosen freely to participate. Sarah Chen watched from the observation gallery as the charter was formally adopted. Beside her, Marcus Rivera smiled slightly. "We actually did it," he said quietly. "We changed the galaxy." "We offered an alternative," Sarah corrected. "These species changed the galaxy by choosing to accept it." Down on the assembly floor, Chancellor Theron approached President Amati. His crystalline structure was brighter than it had been in months, as if he had rediscovered some inner light. "The Council has voted to dissolve itself," Theron said formally. "We recognize that our time has passed. However, my species would like to apply for membership in the Coalition, if you will have us." Victoria studied the former Chancellor carefully. "You understand that membership means equality? That your species would have no more authority than the newest member?" "We understand," Theron replied. "And that is precisely what we need. We spent too long believing ourselves superior. It is time we learned humility." The application was approved after much debate. The species that had once led the Council would now participate as equals in the Coalition. It was a fitting symbol of how completely the galaxy had transformed. Admiral Okafor delivered his final report to President Amati 3 months later. Human military forces had been reduced to defensive levels. The hidden fortresses like Fortress Delta were being converted to Coalition defense stations operated jointly by multiple species. The weapons technology that Dr. Elena Volkov had developed was being shared freely with all Coalition members, along with the defensive shields that had proved so effective. "We are vulnerable now," Okafor admitted. "If the Coalition betrays us, if these species turn on us, we would be at serious risk. We have given away many of our advantages." Victoria nodded slowly. "That was always the gamble, Admiral. We could keep our secrets and our power, but then we would become just another empire, or we could trust others and hope they trust us in return. We chose trust. Was it the right choice?" Okafor asked. Victoria looked out her window at the earth below, blue and green and beautiful. "Ask me in 50 years. But I think so. I hope so." Sarah Chen returned to Earth a hero, though she refused that title. She had simply done what needed to be done. Stood up for human dignity when no one else would. The real heroes, she insisted, were the thousands of humans who had kept working, kept building, kept preparing during the dark years under Council control. She was offered the position of Earth's permanent representative to the Coalition Assembly. She accepted, knowing that the work was far from over. Building something new was harder than destroying something old. There would be disagreements, conflicts, challenges that tested every principle they had established. But for the first time in human history, they were facing those challenges as equals among the stars, not as subordinates begging for scraps. That alone made everything worthwhile. In the years that followed, the Coalition would face many tests. There would be wars with species that refused to accept the new order. There would be internal conflicts between member species. There would be moments when dissolution seemed inevitable. But the basic principle held: cooperation based on mutual respect worked better than domination based on force. Species that joined the Coalition prospered. Species that remained outside watched with growing envy as their neighbors thrived through genuine partnership. Humanity never claimed credit for starting this transformation. They insisted they had simply offered an alternative, and that other species deserved recognition for choosing it. This humility, more than anything, convinced others that humanity was different from previous dominant powers. The Galactic Council became a historical footnote, a reminder of how not to organize a civilization. The coalition that replaced it was imperfect, messy, and constantly evolving. But it was also voluntary, fair, and growing stronger with each passing year. And it all started with one human commander standing before an assembly of bullies and saying a simple word that changed everything. No, the galaxy would never be the same.